Alrighty, so about 5 years ago, I released the Can You Play Metal on a Fender Stratocaster video, and to this day, it's one of my most viewed videos at almost 1.5 million views. Channel's come a long way since then, and I owe it all to you guys. So thanks so much for tuning in week after week and continuing to support the show as much as you do. Since this series started, we've also taken a look at the Fender Telecaster, the Gibson ES335, the Les Paul, and the SG. I've even done 2 spin-off episodes featuring a cigar box guitar and a guitar synth by Fishman. However, this time I think we're going to explore the other side of the guitar world and take a look at some guitar amplifiers as well, as their history is very closely tied to the electric guitar. And what better amp to start with than the 1959 Fender Pro? Now you guys might remember this bad boy from the Tube Shootout video I did last November. This amp actually belonged to my best friend's dad. This was his gigging amp, and he had it for a very, very long time, and it saw its fair share of fiddle contests. Now, since this amp is very, very old, it's seen its fair share of repairs over the years. The original Jensen speaker actually rotted away and the Tolex was peeling off, so my buddy Steve replaced the speaker with a brand new Jensen and put some much needed new Tolex on the shelf. Now, before we try it out, let's take a look at how this amp actually came to be. You see, back in the 1920s and 1930s, guitarists were trying to increase the volume of their instruments. Playing bigger and bigger venues meant that they couldn't be heard by the audience in the back, plus they were being drowned out by the much louder drums and horn instruments. They would endlessly tinker with electronics, trying to come up with all sorts of contraptions that could make their guitars louder. Les Paul, being the innovative madman that he was, ended up wiring a telephone mouthpiece to a phonograph needle, creating one of the first very primitive guitar amps. Now, the first production amplifier was actually made by the predecessors of Rickenbacker, and they named it the Electro. It was mainly for lap steel guitars, and one of the first guys who played them was a guy named Alvino Ray. However, due to his endorsement deal with Gibson, he wasn't permitted to use the amp at live events. Eventually, he found someone who could recreate the design for Gibson, so they put their own name on it. Thus, the Gibson EH100 was born, and as repulsive as it looked, it's still a thing of beauty compared to the human rights violation that is the modern Flying V. Fast forward to the 40s, and the guitar amp became one of the most highly sought-after pieces of gear on the market. Manufacturers like Epiphone and Magnatone were building their own amps, all competing for who could make the loudest and cleanest sounding amp, as distortion didn't catch on with musicians or audiences until the end of the decade. And a good clean sound was considered to be the gold standard. Around the same time, Ampeg developed the first bass amp, not knowing the pain they would bring to recording engineers the world over several decades later. Guitarists quickly discovered that the more they pushed the amps, the better they sounded. As far back as 1949, guitarists would crank their amps to the breaking point to generate overdrive. And in 1951, we got our first distorted guitar sound on record due to a broken speaker in a small combo amp. This was played by none other than world-renowned wife-beater and generally terrible human being, Ike Turner. You can check out that sound on the song Rocket 88. That distorted sound took the guitar world by storm and everybody wanted it. Now, a few years before that happened, Leo Fender came on the scene and joined the competition. He owned a radio repair shop and he set his eyes on the guitar market. Besides building some of the first solid body guitars that we all know today, he was also designing amps. The first of these were the K&F models named after the initials of Fender and Doc Kaufman, with whom Fender was working with. By 1948, Fender started dressing their amps in the very familiar yet fashionably questionable tweed design. The 1955 to 1960 Fender Pros in particular were revered for the lush and ear-pleasing tones that quickly became one of the more popular amps of their time. Besides doing cleans extremely well due to the great amount of headroom, they sported 4 inputs. Why is this important? Because we can jump those inputs into each other and push the amp into overdrive. On a side note, I actually blew up a Jensen speaker in this amp when I was trying to show my buddy Steve how to jump the input. It's like, what's that smell? Whoops! But seriously, old gems like this are a vintage amp snob's wet dream. And it shows. The prices on places like Reverb and eBay are absolutely fucking crazy. $2,000, $3,000, and $4,000. Yeah, that's a pretty penny to spend on an amp, no matter how legendary it is. It's no secret that the Fender is in a class of its own when it comes to clean and overdriven tones, but I run a metal show and damn it, I want to know how this piece of guitar history does with a heavy metal sound. Joining me on this demo is Mr. Christian Vey. He's going to play some clean stuff, and then we're going to jump the inputs and check out how that sounds as well. Okay, now that was a familiar sound, wasn't it? Clean Fender tones have been heard for decades, and this is certainly not breaking any new ground. And I do like the grind you get on the jumped inputs. That's loads of fun, but make sure you plug into an extension cab that can handle the increased volume levels. Otherwise, you're going to wind up shopping for a new Jensen speaker like I did. And no, I didn't fry the original. That was long gone well before I got anywhere near this amp. But of course, the real test of any amp is how well it sounds in a mix. To beef things up a bit, we're going to use the Misanthrope pedal from Master Effects, a boutique pedal builder from right here in Canada. And we're also going to take advantage of that wonderful extension cabinet option and hook it up to our Rev 4x12. Hit it! So that's the 1959 Fender Pro. It's definitely a cool amp, and I really do appreciate my friend Steve for loaning out this amazing piece of history so I could make this video. Now, the hilarious thing was that after we used it in the tube test video there a few months back, some conspiracy theory jerk-off said it wasn't a real 59 Fender because it looked too new. Now, let's be clear here. Steve likes to build custom cabinets, and he redid the Tolex on this amp because it was so far gone. In fact, the original rectifier tube stopped functioning ages ago, and this amp sat untouched for years until he was finally able to locate some new old stock rectifier tubes. Make no mistake, this amp is original. It's still got the two-prong ungrounded plug, which is all kinds of fun when you play through the amp and try singing into a grounded PA. Now, if you guys want to see some more videos in this series, you want to see another history piece on a cool piece of gear, by all means, please leave a comment below because I love hearing from you guys. All right, that's it for this episode. Now go do some work, you lazy bastards!